Thank you and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Tunnelling. I'm your host, Dallas Adams, and today's guests, Paul Machalik and his son, Cooper. How are you guys? All right?
Good, thanks.
Good, mate.
Paul, you're a fitter. You call yourself a basic fitter, but I know you're more than that.
I'm just a fitter, mate. I'm just a mine worker or a tunnel worker. At the moment, I'm in a coal mine. I'm just a normal worker, so yeah.
Oh, cool. Coops, what have you been up to?
I'm second year apprentice electrician at the moment. Mainly doing domestic work, but yeah, I've always had an interest in tunnelling as well. So
Good on you, mate.
good to be here.
Well, thanks for coming along. Like I said, I appreciate your time. You're fly in and fly out, so this is on your break. So thanks very much, Paul. Now, let's talk tunnelling. Now, Paul, I'll direct it straight at you first. Been in the game a while, but your first tunnelling job, mate, where was that at?
First tunnelling job was S1 sewer tunnel in Brisbane, 2001, on a very small little 3.6 metre Robbins hard rock machine.
What was that job about? Sewer, obviously, but where were you going?
Yeah. It went from Albion Park Raceway on the north side through to North Quay, right at the river, straight onto the city.
So that's pipe jacking or?
No. Proper hard rock TBM.
Right. So Robin's gear, you don't mind that gear?
Robin's gear was all right in the day, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It was very challenging job, yeah.
Yeah, good. From there, where'd you end up?
A couple of years off the tunnelling, obviously it dried up in Brisbane, and then we all end up at Clem 7 where I met yourself, Airport Link, and not too bad.
Oh, good. And you did a stint over New Guinea, I heard.
We did 6 weeks in New Guinea in the middle of those two jobs, which was very rewarding as well. The magnitude of work over there to get a machine out of the tunnel and strip it for transport was a lot of work to do, and took a couple of guys from Brisbane, and the job went really well. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So I met you, Clem 7. It was Bowen Hills.
That's correct.
You were involved in pretty much the site setup and the build of TVMs there. I was a first year electrical apprentice, being a tunneler prior to that, and then rocked up there to see you guys go about your business. To me, I was in awe of guys like yourself and a lot of your team that you had with you. Can you give us a bit of insight into that job and what was involved, please?
Certainly can, mate. First of all, you were a first year apprentice, Dallas. You looked all out of control with tools in your hands. I remember the boys like Lionel taking the mickey out of you pretty quickly. And it was a good intro to TVMs for you, I guess, as well. Clem 7 Airport Link probably couldn't have been any better for us, work-wise. Some really good guys, really good culture. Just the mateship was terrific. Good cross shifts, and everything went well for the 5 years.
Yeah, good. So those machines though, like you talk about your sewer tunnels, but then that's why I asked you about that job, because to me, Clem, like I suppose being a first year, I was worrying about holding those tools right so Lionel wouldn't take the piss out of me. Can you give us an idea of that size of that machine? What was involved in getting it and launching it? Because what did we have, 6 months or 3 months or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was 6 months to put them together, and the same at the other end when we pulled them apart. And I think on crew we might have had somewhere up around 20 people putting two machines side by side together. So it was pretty busy, and obviously you keep the good people as we did, and we kept them, and we used them while the machine was mining as well.
Yeah, good. Cooper, I'm going to go to you, mate. Now, during that period, you would have been a young kid hearing your old man come home and probably, cursing and carrying on about work, but then you actually were interested in it. What was that?
Just whenever he'd come home, he'd have different stories, and when you're a little kid, it's sort of hard to figure out what was going on and the actual size of these machines. And it wasn't until actually got to go onto a machine, that it all sort of started to make sense. And yeah, it was just amazing seeing what Dad did when he was at work.
Yeah, good. And you've always been interested in mucking around with cars and stuff like that too. You still sort of dabble in that too, don't you?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff outside of my work to do with any sort of just any physical work really.
Yeah, good.
I love playing around with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't so much into tools and as a tradesman like yourself, but I was definitely interested in my father's work, and I was very similar to you, mate. I was hearing these stories when my father would get home, and I got the opportunity to go along to his job. So I used to actually go on Saturdays. So if I wasn't playing rugby or didn't have something else on, I'd actually get up at 4 a.m, head off to work with my old man at 5. And back then, they used to come and pick us up in a van. So we'd all pile into the van. So I'd be getting in there as a little kid with these big, rough-looking tunnelers. And half of them be hung over, or most of them be hung over from the night before, and we'd be cruising out to this tunnel, to this bloody hole in the mountain. And my job back then was to clean the crib room. So they had crib rooms on the surface, and I'd clean the crib rooms, make sure the laundry was done. So I was pretty much what they call nowadays a piggy. And I'd be cleaning all them out, and I wasn't allowed to go underground until I had all that done. And I'd wait at the portal, so the front of that bloody hole. And I'd wait there. And back then they had this Lokies, they called them. So it was like a shuttle cart, like the coal mine. And they'd come out and tip all the spoil out of this tip head. And once he come out, I could jump on board with him and head into the tunnel. So these tunnels that my father worked on back in New Zealand were close to 1 kilometre straight into a mountain. So I got to experience that when I was a kid too. So I suppose that was my first initiation of tunnelling. And then I think it was, good 10 years later, I had my first chance of working in the tunnels. And it's probably looking back now, as, having that experience and then going into it I was a lot better off. Yeah. So Paul, from Clem 7, you headed over to Airport Link, but how different were those two tunnels, do you reckon? Were they similar in what you believe, what you had to do?
Yeah. I think majority of the maintenance crews came from one to the next, which meant the camaraderie and the mateship was there. I had the privilege of handing over with Shane for pretty much 5 years straight, and set each other up, to succeed and not to fail, and it makes the job so much better, and looking after your mates. So the crews may have changed a little bit, but the majority of the people were still there, and that's where you get the experience, you get the work ethic, and everything else rolls with it. So they were very good, very good.
You guys come in, like you've got your team, and you know who's who and what they can do. And the good thing about you is, you can sort of preempt, what has to happen, and that's a good gel, like you say. Once you build these TBMs, right, and you've got it all sorted, and they launch, and away they go. What happens to the maintenance side of it and making sure everything's still right? So what happens there?
We've got to maintain them 24/7 from one end to the other. So I know at the start of Clem 7 they only had one fitter on the machines, and it was too much. We eventually got 2 fitters on each machine, which is what we ran on Airport Link. One electrician, and same thing. You build a camaraderie within the electrical and the mechanical people, and you keep the machines running.
Yeah, good. During that time, mate, that your old man's talking about, I was first year apprentice when they started building this one at Bowen Hills. So I did the first 2 years at Bowen Hills. One of my most important jobs and roles for me was cooking a barbecue on Saturday at Smoko. And it was usually 10 o'clock Smoko. So I'd come in at 6, have our pre-start, and my prep work was making sure that barbie was ready and was going by 10 o'clock. Crucial part. And the thing about this job that we're on was a real funny roster that I hadn't experienced before. So I was on permanent days.
Yeah.
So even though I was an apprentice, I was still doing 12-hour shifts. And then on Saturday, I was doing 8. So that's why I meant my main role was to get this barbecue sorted. these guys were doing a funny roster. I don't know if you were on that Paul 7374 roster. Mate, it threw me big time.
Yeah.
But it was good because it was, for me, I got to see the whole cruise. You know, one would be on nights, one would be on days, and one would be out on its break. And then you'd have these rotations. The good thing about that was I got to see everyone work.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, the one thing about doing that is everyone works differently. Like, even though you know your crew, but each different crew works differently and they do things differently. So, it's very interesting in that case.
Yeah, I think that applies everywhere, even in my work, working with different tradesmen and that sort of stuff. We all do things a bit differently in the way we work.
Yeah, good. Paul, you know, we've had a few conversations, you know, prior to this talk, and you know, one of the best conversations I had with you was up at camp when I got an opportunity. You got me up there to do Why Safety Matters, and we had a bit of a workout in the gym, and then we went over to the mess and we had a feed. Now, you know, we did talk, as we do, and the good thing about it is, you know, you understand me, and you know, and I was able to sort of get inside your head with what I'm going through with Why Safety Matters. Going back, you know, from when you first started, and I suppose that's Suaton, but even prior to that, whatever you're doing before, in New Guinea, you know, get an opportunity to go over there and take a TBM out of where it was, and you know, you had a time frame. So working where you are now, you know, what's it compare to way back then to now, do you believe?
What really has changed is the safety. It's changed everywhere, you know, in industry, all the industry, you know. It's gone to it's evolving all the time. It's going to new levels and, you know, new restraints and everything. And I don't think it'll matter what you're in anymore. The safety controls have been tightened right up, and they needed to, which is, you know, going to help all of us and our children and everyone else that go into tunnelling and whatever they go into nowadays. So that's the big change that I see. Yeah,
good. Coops, listening to this, you know, and you would have heard, you know, quite a few stories with your old man and then his mates and stuff like that. What's your take on what we do? What interests you, say, about this tunnelling game and things like that as a son of a tunneler or person?
Sort of hard to pinpoint one thing, but probably just the way that everyone works together, and they're always doing a different kind of thing, always different work, a lot of troubleshooting and fault finding, that sort of stuff, and I've always been really interested in that sort of work. Yeah. So to be able to jump on board with a crew and do something like that, I think would be amazing.
Yeah, good. You sent me a message and you talked about camaraderie, you know, and the fact that I know for sure that you love this industry anyway, you know, and you know, what would you, what's the draw card for you?
Exactly that, I think. Mateship and camaraderie. I think that if maybe you talk to 100 miners and they'd probably tell you, you know, 90 ought to tell you the same thing, you know. It's even to underground mining, to tunnelling, it's different, and tunnelling is what it is. You know, I guess Cooper's now good friends with, you know, the Lionel and the Greg and those sort of guys that are my good mates, you know. Mm-hmm. Cooper had an hour or two the other day at work and in between jobs, and so he went and saw Greg, you know. Like, that's the camaraderie, and that's, you probably don't get it in all industry, but I know you do get it in tunnelling, and we always have. So
great. Righto, guys. Well, I'll probably direct this at you more than Paul. What's the best project that you've worked on?
Best project in tunnelling has got to be both the Clem 7 and Airport Link, and exactly what I just said. You know, it's about the people. It's you know, we did the Clem 7 and we designed our crews, and you know, and we developed our people, and we pretty much just moved everyone to Airport Link, and then it was pretty easy to do the same thing. like I said, good cross shifts, good handovers, set your mates up. It's basic stuff, but it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Very good.
I had a question, the funniest thing you've seen in tunneling, and we had a bit of a chat prior. There's probably stuff that I'd seen that, is borderline bloody funny in my head, but probably not to others. And, I think, a few of the other guests have sort of had a good hard think about it as well. But have you got anything for me in that
Mate, when you sent me the template through, I struggled to find the funniest thing in tunnelling. I don't know why. I've no idea that nothing, jumped straight out at me. But I know when we launched the Robbins machine back in 2000, it didn't even have a crib room, and we weren't going to the surface for cribs. So we built a crib room on the back gantry, and there's only 2 crews. We were 10-hour shifts, and a mate of mine, Jock, he built this steel cabinet and put a couple of hinges on it and a lock, just so we could lock up some food and like tinned food and all that sort of stuff, because you're a long way in the tunnel. A couple of days later, the cross shift smashed the lock off it and ate all the food. So we might have been a bit cranky, but at the end of the day, you couldn't even blame the third crew because there's only 2 of us, only 2 crews. So that's probably the funniest thing that I can remember, because that's probably tunnelling too. It's
well, that's dead right. I remember the old man telling me stories about how they has to fix a few of their cross shifts up for steel and stuff like that too. But did you? That would have crossed a few of your minds, I suppose.
Oh, it probably would have, mate. But that's probably the funniest thing, that mate of mine built this box and probably should have just put the stuff on the shelf because they were going to eat it anyway.
Bit of an effort to smash a lock open, but you could have just had it there. You talked about this New Guinea job. I'm really interested in that because I actually didn't realise you'd went over there, and I'd like to, to see if you could sort of tell us a little bit about that. It seems really interesting. Like, obviously I was on the Clem and the airport link.
Yeah, towards the end of, nearly right at the end of Clem 7, I knew this was coming up. Redpath had a TBM job over there, drilling into the side of Octetti into the open cut, just for water relief. And they put a 5-metre Robbins main beam machine in. And about 2 kilometres in, the machine actually mined into a fault, but it couldn't go any further. So they sat there for 2 weeks with the cut head turning over, and it just kept raining in. So they pulled the machine back and bulkheaded it up and left the machine there. And then they did handheld mining around it and then broke through the other end for the water relief. But then they still had to get the machine out. So, I don't know who else they contacted or what, but a mate of mine contacted me, and I took a couple of guys with me, Lionel and Gareth, and another lad from England, and we sort of had 6 weeks to bring the machine back to the surface. So for one, it was in 2 kilometres. We dropped the cutter head off, which is still in there today, and then railed this machine back out to the open, and then stripped it and got it ready for transport. And just to go up there, and they put us up in a house, and it was probably one of the best jobs, most rewarding. Went up there, developed our own JSAs on day one, and then between the 4 of us and the Robbins rep, Glenn, and whenever we needed the cranes from up at the mill, they'd come down, maybe 2 days late, but they'd come down and do our lifts for us whenever we needed it, and it was a good break between both jobs.
Listening to this, mate, obviously these tunnels here in Brisbane, you live in Brisbane, but wouldn't it be good to work in a industry that you can also travel the world into, eh?
Yeah, it'd be amazing just to go and work internationally and see how they do things, as well as just being able to go and explore like a different culture as well.
Yeah, definitely.
See how their
Absolutely
tunnelling is done, as well as just their everyday lifestyle.
Yeah, good. So, Paul, I just want to ask you about Airport Link because you talked about retrieving or demobbing TBMs after the job's finished. But what was the case with the TBMs at Airport Link, and what happened with the cutter heads there? What did you guys end up doing there?
The decision wasn't made until we were already mining, whether we were going to pull them out or we were going to leave them in there. Because I know it was a tight area, and they would, as you know, they'd have to sink a shaft and craneage and everything else to get these machines out. So they chose to leave them in. By memory, I think I know we did it all over a couple of days. As in, so from the rodeo side, they'd excavated out, they'd built these big chambers for us to push the cutter head and the shield assembly out onto that rail, and then it dropped down on some decent hydraulic jacks, and then we grouted them in there. So we pretty much backed the edges down one tunnel while that one was down and getting filled up while we were getting the other one ready, and then about a day and a half later, I think it was, each one, and then we grouted the other one in, and you drive over them today. So,
was there much difference having to take it out in a cabin rather than a shaft with gantry cranes and all that sort of stuff? Was there, did you have to look at it and go, hang on, how are we going to do this first, or what was your intake or input into sort of getting in that?
Oh, it wasn't too bad. The bearing of the cutter head and shield assembly was pretty basic. It just meant that once they were buried, then we would start to take the gantries apart and stuff like that. So it was all pretty basic as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff wasn't kept. The Clem 7, we kept everything, as you know, and it went in storage and then it was reused again. Whereas the airport gantries, they were pretty much scrapped.
Mate, we talked about this, and it's interesting, and I can only think of myself and what I would, give my I've had an opportunity to send a note back 25 years ago when I rocked up onto my first job, and what would you say to that young Paul that rocked up to, say, that sewer tunnel, and what sort of advice would you give that Paul?
Like I said earlier, Dallas, I wouldn't change much, as you're the same as I, and we all are. You love the mateship and everything else. I'd probably say to Cooper or any of his mates that want to go into tunnelling, get in and do it while you're young, otherwise you end up like us and buggered at 50, But the fact is they can and they can travel and they can earn good money, and it is big rosters and big hours, but my only word to anybody would be do it while you can and do it while you're young, and then you can probably get out of it and lead a pretty decent life after that as well. So
listening to this, you must be thinking, Jesus, we've probably got a story to tell, but what are you thinking? Like if you had the opportunity to come into tunnelling, and no doubt you will, one day, with your interest and your ability to do what you do as well, how are you going to approach it, do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of just walk straight into it. I'm really excited to sort of see if I do ever get an opportunity to get into tunnelling, just to see what it's like. Even if I don't stay there long term, I know it'll be a really good experience, and I'd learn a lot of not even just electrical work, just working like camaraderie and that, like Dad was talking about earlier, and just how tunnelling is just one big family, really.
Good on you. Now, this is just an opportunity to say what you want, about tunnelling. Like you said, Paul, very similar to you. We're passionate about it. We love it. There's probably a few times that I wish I, looked at something else, but I've always come back. What would you like to say about tunnelling if you want to have a bit of time?
As in what sort of?
Oh, in general, really, if there's anything you want to say.
Not really. I think it keeps the people in the city. had I not gone up to Central Queensland, I'd have ended up in Sydney or Melbourne, but I'd still be, in the city. You keep your family together. I'd love to go back and experience the same thing with Cooper. Experience what he's always heard. Unfortunately, I've gone a different path, and anyone who wants to do it, if they've got good work ethic and are keen to do the work, they should really have it. Try to get into it.
So there's no chance of you coming back into it, mate?
I think I'm too old, Dallas.
Cooper, what do you reckon, mate? What do you want to say anything about?
Oh, I can't really think of much off the top of my head. I'm just... Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, no, sorry, I don't know anything about that.
I think the other thing that just hit me then was, in a few years' time, when Cooper does go that way, the Peter Duggan and Lionel and, yourself and you people will still be in it.
Yeah.
And to me, Cooper come home and say, I was talking to Dallas today, or, talking to Peter Duggan today. And that's the rewarding thing for me, is like he's already got that friendship with these people, and now then it becomes a working relationship as well.
Well, to be honest, Paul, that's exactly what I'm about now.
Yeah.
To be honest, I probably could have walked away 2.5 years ago, but I know very well when my mates' kids are coming into this game, and there's quite a few like you, Cooper, that are coming in. I'm going into tag boards now on projects down in Sydney, and seeing surnames that I'm familiar with, and then going down and meeting them, and the son of my mates or even my father's mates, and that's exciting to see that. Like I said, I was excited to come into it, and having my father, my grandfather in it too, and you know it, mate. That, and I would love an opportunity to have you work with you and show you what I know, because I only know a little bit, but steer you in some sort of direction that you can always find out more.
I'd love to work alongside the likes of yourself and some of Dad's other mates. I know they're all very good at what they do. So I'd love to learn off some of you guys.
Put a bit of shit on them.
Especially that line, I'll pay them back for me.
I need to.
Well, that's great, mate. So that's Let's Talk Tunnelling for this episode. I appreciate again you guys for coming on. Hopefully I'll wrap this up and get it out on the road and see how we go from there. But thanks very much. Tune in to the next episode after this. And this is Dallas Adams signing off. Thank you.